Since 1951, this is The Legend. 105.3, 95.3.
Got some dead air.
Well, Phil and I were enjoying talking so much, I forgot what I was doing over here. It's time for the Friends and Neighbors Hour. And, of course, today my friend and neighbor is Mr. Phil Schweitzer. Phil, thanks for being here, buddy.
Glad to be here.
Yes, I'm so happy that you agreed to come. You and I have talked about you being here before.
Yeah.
You're a busy man, though.
Well, I'm mostly retired these days.
Mostly retired, but still busy.
Oh, yeah. Somehow, even retirement, you can keep active.
Yeah. Well, in case you don't know, Phil and I go way back. We were talking about that earlier. I think you and I met probably somewhere in the 90s.
Yeah.
But you're a part, and we're one of the founding members of the farm.
Yes.
We'll get to that at some point. But Phil, I wanted to kind of dive deep with you, even though I've known you forever. I don't know a lot of your early family history and where you came from and all that kind of stuff before you landed in Summertown. All that. So how did Phil Schweitzer become Phil Schweitzer?
Well, I started out that way, I guess. But no, I was originally from outside Philadelphia. Went to school with Reggie Jackson.
Really?
And Netanyahu.
No kidding.
Yes, one of which I'm a little more proud of than the other. But at any rate, it was an experience. And then I went to school in Western Pennsylvania. And just to jump to the story about my coming to Tennessee, I was teaching guitar at a music store in this small town where I went to school.
Yeah.
Saw a Billboard magazine on the counter with a picture of the Grateful Dead and all of the colorful light show.
Yeah.
And I said, that looks amazing. I've got to go. So here I was out in the boonies of Western Pennsylvania. I had a friend with a car. I talked him into driving us out to San Francisco in the summer of love of 1967.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so we were there. You worked at the post office, did a lot of the things that people were doing in those days of my age, and started attending a class, which was basically run by a professor at San Francisco State. And then we did a tour around the country. We all moved into school buses. I'm sort of condensing this story.
Yeah, you're skipping a lot. I'm going to drag you back here in a minute.
And we got into school buses and went around the country and landed in Tennessee. We love Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I guess by now we've been here for 54 years.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how much detail you want, but
well, I'm gonna drag you back a little bit. First of all, you were born in what year?
1947.
Born in 47.
Yeah.
47.
It's receding fast.
Oh my gosh! So you were born in 47. So you grew up you kind of grew up in the 50s as a young lad.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So 50s was, the all America, Leave It to Beaver kind of.
It was indeed.
Kind of life,
Yeah, that was my life in those days.
Yeah, and so you grew up where? And give me those 50s years. I want to know about that.
Oh, way back.
Yes.
It was suburban Philadelphia.
Yeah. So a little neighborhood.
Yep,
And
little neighborhood.
Mom and Dad, what did they do?
My father was he was a marketing research consultant.
Oh, really?
So he would figure out the potential of various products, and he toured around to see whether it would sell.
Yeah.
And that was his job. My mother was a school teacher.
That actually sounds like an interesting job.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you were a young lad, and you probably didn't care what he did. You were just playing.
Yeah. In those days, it was why don't you go out and play?
Yeah,
you don't hear much of that.
That's right. Go out and play.
Yeah.
And we had that when I was growing up. Go out and play. But
yeah.
So what was play like? I mean, growing up, the kids around you. I mean, what was life like as a young boy?
Well, I don't think that it was all that unusual because I walked to school, and after school every day we'd play touch football in the churchyard.
Okay.
And that
Interesting.
that was rather uneventful.
Yeah, okay. And so you begin to grow up. And what interest did you? You said you played football. Did you play sports?
Well, I did, but I was never very good at
Weren't
it.
very good at it.
But I was more interested in music. So
Yeah. How did that develop?
I studied violin
Really?
for a number of years. And
So you had a violin teacher, I guess.
I had a violin teacher. He was a former principal of a neighborhood school that would come to my house.
Oh wow. Okay.
And he was just a wonderful man, and I loved to play music.
Now, do you still play the fiddle some?
Somewhat. Mostly, what happened to me too was that I started finding an interest in other instruments, and it was the guitar that really caught my attention.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to study lead belly.
How old were you when you began to guitar?
I was
began to
14.
14.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds about right. That sounds about right. We start getting that 12, 13, 14. If you're going to take an interest in something like that.
Yeah. And I was absolutely obsessed.
Yeah.
And come home from school, and instead of studying, I was picking up the guitar.
Oh, wow.
And so that was how I ended up, teaching music at this local music store.
Yeah. What kind of music? You said lead belly?
Well, the first introduction to playing guitar was a Pete Seeger album called How to Play the 12-String Guitar Like Lead Belly. And I just learned that frontwards and backwards. And I had an old guitar. In those days, cheap guitars were truly cheap.
Yeah.
And I would play that thing till my fingers bled.
Oh, my gosh.
It was terrible, hard to play.
Yeah.
But that didn't stop me because I was, like I said, I was obsessed.
Passionate about it.
Passionate.
Yeah. So you graduated high school what year?
65.
65. Did you go immediately to college or?
Yeah, I did. In fact, it was that summer. I was 17.
And where'd you go to college?
Allegheny College in Western Pennsylvania.
Tell me about Allegheny College. I'm not
They're
familiar.
a very small school, maybe 1,400 students.
Okay.
In the snow belt, not far from Buffalo.
Oh,
New York.
wow. Okay.
And I went there for several years.
What were you studying?
I was an English major. I don't know what I was going to do. I hadn't figured that out.
Okay.
But it was at that point that I decided I wanted to go see the world.
All right. Now, 67, a lot happened in our country in
That's
67.
right.
So were you beginning to pay attention to that kind of
Oh,
stuff?
absolutely.
So what was going on in the mindset there?
Well, of course, it was Vietnam era.
Yeah.
And I had a student deferment
Okay.
when I went to school. And when I left school, that, of course, no longer was valid. So I became a conscientious objector.
Okay.
And it's not something I would have done in another situation. I always felt that if I were faced with joining the army and fighting Hitler,
Yeah.
that would have been a different story. But I couldn't subscribe to the idea of fighting in Vietnam.
Yeah, well, there were a tremendous amount of the country that felt that way. at that time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a big upheaval.
Yeah,
It was a terrible time.
it really was. And I think that was the starting point for an awful lot of the counterculture movement,
Yeah.
which I joined
Yeah.
in '67, the Summer of Love as it became known,
Yeah. Yeah.
in California.
Yeah. How did that happen? What made you aware? I mean, how did you become aware of things happening in California?
I think that there was fairly well known, but as I say, it was this Billboard magazine showing that there were other things going on out there that I had never witnessed.
Yeah.
Certainly nothing that I'd seen in my little town in Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And I thought, I really need to go see what this is that's going on. When I first went out there, it was a shock. I looked at people with hair down their backs and I said, well, this is crazy. I don't think I can do this.
Yeah.
But you know what? I didn't cut my hair for a number of years.
Yeah.
I just joined in.
Yeah.
And but it was also a lot of drugs that that wasn't what I was interested in. I was really just trying to see what this new lifestyle was like.
Yeah. Yeah. There was I don't know. Of course, I wasn't there, and what I know is just things that I've read or seen, documentary-wise, those kind of things. But knowing what I know about you and the relationship that I've had with you and the friendship with you and Doug, and knowing a little bit, I guess, inside information on the farm, being an outsider, I know that you guys weren't about what a lot of other people did in that same era.
That's right. Yeah, we were, as what became the farm was really a family-oriented type of lifestyle.
Yeah.
We weren't the freewheeling, sex, drugs, and rock and roll that you kept hearing
No,
about.
there was that world,
Yeah.
but you guys really weren't part of that world.
It never interested me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked exciting, all of these people doing crazy things, but I knew too many people whose lives were being destroyed.
Yeah.
And I wanted the solid feeling of a family. And I had my first son when I was 23 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, out there in California, you kind of got into, I guess, this cultural movement.
Yeah. It was interesting because there were a lot of people doing, exploring not only lifestyles, but ways of thinking that had to do with what I would call a spiritual movement.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a religion so much as it was a spiritual quest.
Yeah.
To try to determine what were what ways could we live in society where we could find peace.
Yeah.
And what we discovered was that religions had a common theme, all religions. And in Christianity, that is love thy neighbor as thyself.
Yeah.
And that was the basis of our movement.
Yeah.
And you know what? That works.
It does work.
That's the way.
Yeah, if it's done right, it does work.
Done right.
The problem is we have a problem doing it right.
Well, that's true. We're humans. We fall from grace.
Yeah, absolutely,
periodically.
absolutely. Well, so you were how old when you began to be on the buses?
I guess I moved into a bus in '69. I'm guessing. So I was 22.
How many people were doing this? I mean, how many people were there on these buses?
Oh, we had, in the class that we used to attend, there was 1,500 people a week.
Yeah, now the class, tell us about that.
Well, it was just a group of people that wanted to meet and talk about these very things, about lifestyle and what was going on in the world and how we could deal with the challenges of the era.
Right.
Which were very difficult. 1968 was a tumultuous year.
Oh, yeah.
And it was an upheaval going on in the country.
Right.
And we just struggled to find a way to deal with all of the challenges that we were facing as a culture.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I know that from the documentary that I just recently watched, it was told from a perspective of a young lady who was born on the farm and then grew up and left and kind of came back and you have to kind of wonder, how it was put together stuff. But there was some quite a bit of footage, I guess, from the Stephen Gaskin teachings or his leadership and that kind of thing when it first started. So can you kind of elaborate on that just a little bit as far as how he developed a following, I guess, is the best way to put it.
There were so many other people that were trying to assume the role of spiritual teacher, all in San Francisco.
There were a lot of that.
A lot of it. It was all over the place, and good and bad.
Yeah.
What I liked about him was that he was sort of down to earth.
Yeah.
A very pragmatic view.
And he was a professor at one of the schools.
He was a professor at San Francisco State.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. And so the class originated at San Francisco State and expanded into going into it was Glide Memorial Church is where I first went.
Okay.
Which was just a church that had a kind of a lecture hall kind of place that we all met in.
Okay.
And then that evolved into well, let's go around and talk about all of these ideas around the country. And we were living in school buses. So we all made a caravan of school buses, about 250 of us.
Well, the question how I have, and this just comes to my mind, is how was that supported? How did you guys support yourselves doing this?
We used to, on the caravan, we'd stop at various cities and do jobs at the local co-ops and churches and universities, cleaning, raking leaves and cleaning out people's attics, any way that we could earn money to buy gas to get to the next city.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it worked.
Yeah.
And we went all the way around the country and got back to San Francisco in 1971.
Yeah.
And we said, hey, let's go buy a farm.
Yeah.
It wasn't really presumptuous. It wasn't being presumptuous to call it the farm. It was just that we never came up with another name.
Yeah.
Let's go make a farm. Let's go do. Well, I was never a farmer, and I'm still not.
And there were a lot of kids with you that weren't farmers.
Not at all. I was more of a technical guy. I said, if you can't plug it in, I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And so, but there were fortunately good farmers among us.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, anyway, I'll tell you just a little story about it, because once we arrived in Tennessee, having just picked it on a map, threw a dart, said, let's go to Tennessee, because we'd met such nice people here.
Yeah.
And so we landed at Percy Priest Park. And we started to send out search parties looking for land.
Yeah.
And we just weren't coming up with anything. We even bought a place in Cheatham County. It turned out to be a fraction of the size that it was supposed to have been. So we left there. But one day I go to Groon's guitar store.
Yeah.
On 2nd Avenue. George Groon was just a young man at the time, as we all were.
I've met George.
You've met George.
Yes.
Amazing guy.
Yeah.
Well, he was just this young fella, had a little store on 2nd Avenue at the time, and I went in there to do some guitar business of some kind. And I met a woman. She came up to me and she said, are you with this caravan group that's over at Percy Priest?
Now I want to know how she knew that.
Oh, I can't imagine. There weren't a lot of people that looked like us at the time. And I said, yeah. So she said, well, we've got a bit of property down in Lewis County. If you'd like to stay there instead of being here at Percy Priest, here's a map. Head on down.
How about that?
I went back to the group at Percy Priest and I said, well, let's go down. Everybody was happy to do that because we were just having lines of people driving through the park to check us out. Who were these?
Well, yeah,
people?
we were like, I don't remember this specifically, but I remember people talking about it. That in fact there was news stories. You guys made local news stories. The TV stations were covering the fact that there was these hippies that had landed in Percy Priest Lake and all that kind of stuff.
We were like the Martians.
Yeah, I got to tell you a quick story.
Sure.
On a side note, you remember I was telling you about Elrod?
Sure.
Our good friend Elrod, who was part of this station, and you knew him and in his later years, and he and I were on the radio together, and this was after I had started working with you guys some in the studio stuff. So, and I made mention of the fact that I'd been up at the hippie farm, and for some reason I said, do they like to be called hippies? And Elrod said, oh, they know they're hippies.
Yeah, it was not something we ran away from. It was fairly obvious.
So, I've kept that in my memory. He said, they know they're hippies. But
so,
anyway,
we
you
come
were a
down.
spectacle.
Yeah, well, here we were. We come down. I went ahead of the caravan.
Yeah.
To open up, make sure everything was okay. And the map showed a certain road that went into this property, but it had a gate on it.
Yeah.
And we couldn't get in. It was a locked gate.
Yeah.
And I saw that it was part of this neighbor's gate. It was his fence. So I went up and I go knock on his door.
Yeah.
Well, you can imagine what his reaction was. He was an old gentleman.
Yeah.
Said, well, I'm not going to open that gate. And I'm starting to panic. The caravan's on its way and I can't get into the property. And So the caravan arrives. I go in and talk to Stephen Gaskin at the time.
Yeah.
Was the leader of the group. I said, I can't get in. I guess I could go talk with him again. He says, no, let's not be pushy here. Let's just, we'll cut our own road. So we found an old logging road, and we got out our bow saws, which we had to fill our little stoves in our buses.
Yeah.
And cut our own road down into the property. And that was my first lesson about be good to your neighbors. You know, we're going to be a part of this community.
So the person who told you about this place,
Yeah,
it was their place.
it was their place.
And they said, you come down there and stay on it.
Right.
That's amazing.
They had a factory up in Nashville. They were the Martins, and they made Amitex, which was a styrofoam.
Okay.
And we got to know them over the years, and wonderful people.
All right.
But
Well,
and there we were on this piece of property, and about 3 or 4 months later, the property next door came up for sale, and that's where we are still to this day.
okay. So it's not where you
Right.
Your original landing spot is not actually the farm
Right.
where you are now, but
Right.
it's close to it.
That's right.
Interesting.
Yep. Yeah, it was serendipity, I guess. Here we were, just out in Lewis County.
So your first purchase, as far as the land,
1,000 acres.
was it 1,000 acres?
$70 an acre.
Me being in the real estate business, let me make some calculations here. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
$70
so
an acre.
What
What year was that purchase?
That would have been in 71.
71. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it wasn't real good growing land, but we had enough money to pay for that in cash
Yeah.
by just pooling all of our money together. And it was the following year, maybe 2 years later, we bought an additional 760 acres.
Okay.
So that's the total size of the community now is 1,760 acres.
1760.
Plus, we've bought much land around it just to protect it, because most of it would have been logged. And
Yeah.
so we bought another couple thousand acres.
Yeah.
So we have pretty close to 4,000 acres total.
Wow. Wow. But not all of it's considered the farm.
No, we have another organization called Swan Trust,
Yeah.
which just purchases land to protect it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what, and they're all under conservation easement.
Yeah.
So nothing can be built on it, or no trees can be cut.
So you're not going to let me go up there and build
No,
a
I'm
house and
sorry.
live on it? I'm sorry. Well, listen, sometimes we have people that want to call in and maybe ask a question.
Sure.
This, that, and the other. Let me see. Let me do this different. I've got one trying to call in. Give me just a second. Maybe this will work. I'll try it. Now I'll try it. Let's see if this works for me. Hey, good morning. You're on WDXE with us.
Jeff, ask the gentleman how many people live on the farm today.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. I promise. How many people do live?
I'd say that maybe around 250.
Yeah, 250 people or so.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, but there was a lot more than that when you.
We got up to about 1,500 people.
Yeah.
But that's another story.
Yeah.
Because we continued to grow so quickly, because we had people from all over the country and the world, really.
Yeah.
Hey, let's go move on the hippie farm.
Yeah.
And so they were lining up at the gate, and and we took them on. We
Yeah.
took on people that maybe we shouldn't have,
Yeah.
and we grew too fast.
Yeah.
We were quite literally a commune
Yes.
for the first 12 years, which meant that everything was owned in common. Nobody had their own money. You had to go to the store and you were allotted a certain amount of food.
Yeah.
It was a commune.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? It really didn't work.
It didn't work.
It just didn't. And by 1983, after 12 years, we said, enough of this, we're going to turn into a co-op.
Yeah.
And that means that everybody's got to have a job, and everybody's going to have to earn money
Yeah.
and pay into a common treasury to support the community.
Right.
And we told Stephen, thanks, but we're moving on.
Yeah.
You know, he was no longer the leader of the community.
Yeah.
And we said, we got this. We're going to run by committee.
Yeah.
elected committee, and that's how we've survived in these last 40 plus years.
Yeah.
Was
It wouldn't have survived otherwise.
never. I wouldn't be there
Yeah.
if it had remained a commune.
Now, you didn't stay there the whole time.
Well, we had 12 sister communities around the country and around, really, we had one in Australia, we had one in Ireland,
Yeah.
and I went to the city center up in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And I was there when the farm changed over in we call it the changeover.
The changeover.
Changeover. It went from a commune to a co-op. And,
okay.
and so, well, there I was in Washington, and suddenly I didn't have a place to come home to. So because all the houses were taken up with the people that were already living there.
Yeah.
It was a whole different system, transformed overnight. And so I stayed up in Washington for a while before I returned in 1993.
Okay.
And that's where I met you.
Yeah. You, when 93, when you
93.
came, I was already working some with Doug.
With Doug, yeah,
And
doing
his-
commercials for the cable company.
Yeah, Village Media was
That's right.
his little company, and you joined that company when you landed
That's right.
back at the farm. And then we developed a friendship and working relationship. Very good stuff. I'm fascinated because in early Christianity, when the church first began, they were a commune.
Yes.
And of course, the things about it works great as long as everybody's perfect.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point, Jeff.
It works great as long as everybody's perfect.
That's right.
The problem is we're imperfect,
That's exactly right.
and we just can't help it.
Well, there was this idea that somehow you could be selfless,
Yeah.
which is what it would require to make a
Yes.
commune work,
Yeah,
is to only care about everyone else, even beyond yourself.
yes,
And we actually did pretty well for a little while there.
yeah.
But we were taking on too many people.
Well, that's what happened is people wanted to come and join on to it without really knowing what they were getting into.
Exactly. They thought, oh, this looks like fun.
Yes,
But it was hard work.
yeah,
And we had to build the place from scratch. There was nothing on that property when we arrived.
yeah,
And we just pulled our buses onto this vacant land
yeah.
and lived in our buses and collected water from the streams. I can remember I parked my bus above a stream and I had to go down with a 5-gallon bucket to pick out, to get the water to bring to the bus, dig out houses. I mean, it was raw. It was pioneering living. for
Yeah,
us.
yeah. Y'all didn't have
There was
none of the
nothing.
modern conveniences.
Not a thing. No hot and cold running orange juice, as we used to say. So we really had to build it from scratch. And that took commitment. And a lot of the people, and not all, but some of the people that came didn't realize the effort that it would require.
Yeah, yeah,
So everybody wasn't, busting their butts to make it work.
yeah.
And ultimately, so what happened then once it changed over was people said, well, I can't find work around here. They moved to Nashville. They went
Right.
back out to California. They went to live with mom and pop, wherever that was.
Yeah,
And we got down to a little over 200 people, which remarkably we've stayed at about that level in the last 40 plus years.
yeah. I remember there was a lady that evidently lived there on the farm when I first began to work with Doug in doing the little low budget TV commercials
Right.
we were doing. I think her name was Ann. And,
It was.
And I remember talking to her, and she said, "We basically live in glorified shacks."
Well, glorified is even stretching it. I mean, it was a challenge. When I look back at it now, we had to have just been young and enthusiastic, criminally naive, even,
Yeah.
to try to make this thing work. It was an amazing experiment.
It reminds me of a statement that I've always thought was so funny and sometimes so accurate. Is it says, "We plowed forward with all of the confidence that ignorance brings with it."
That's very, very true.
So there you go. So somewhere in the mid 70s, I was in high school and we took a field trip up to the farm.
You did.
Yes, we did. Yeah, we had a busload of high school students that showed up at the farm. Now, at that time, the printing company was going
Sure.
on, and that was the reason we were going.
Oh.
So,
Yeah.
tell me about the book publishing company, how that got started,
Well,
or do you know?
there again, just like calling it the farm, we just called it the book publishing company. Everything had its, we still live on First Road and Second Road and Third Road. No names in those days.
Yeah.
At any rate, we were publishing our own books and printing them as well. Which, by the way, is
Yeah,
still...
but that don't just magically happen.
No, there again, it was an effort to find the books that would sell, that would support the company. At first, it was just Stephen's ramblings. We printed books that were his lectures.
Yeah.
And it evolved into one of the things about the community in those days, we were vegetarians.
Yes.
And so we started publishing cookbooks, vegetarian cookbooks, and they sold. And maybe our biggest seller in those days was the CB radio.
What now?
CB radio.
Okay.
You remember CB radio?
I do remember.
Well,
Why?
there you
But
go.
why was that part of what you
We
did?
wrote a book called The Big Dummy's Guide to CB Radio. And it was a $1 million seller.
Well, time out just a minute. The Big Dummies Guide? Well, that took off in a big way with, what is it, the Dummies Guide to this, the Dummies
Oh,
Guide
yeah,
to that?
exactly. We just jumped on the train.
Oh, okay.
But it sold, and we had some talented people, I have to say.
Yeah.
The artwork in this thing was just beautiful.
Yeah.
And it was a handbook for how to use the CB radio.
Is there a copy of that book
Oh,
around
yeah.
anywhere?
Oh, yeah.
I want one of those
I will
books.
get you one.
I want one of those books.
It was impressive. It was impressive. So
That's amazing.
So what happened though is that we published that book and the money was rolling in.
Okay,
We
good.
were actually a success.
Yeah.
It was really doing well.
That's amazing.
So we said, well, what are we going to do with this money? Well, let's build up our farm, the farming operation.
Yeah.
Let's grow more food.
Yeah.
So we grew so much food that year that we couldn't pick it. It was just not enough of us to get out into the fields and pick all this food.
Oh, wow.
And we lost our shirt.
You got too big too fast.
Too big, too fast. It turns out we had really good artists.
Yeah.
We had good farmers. We didn't have good business people. So we made some mistakes along the way. You have a phone call there?
No, that was a text. I get text messages
Okay.
sometimes.
All right.
But that was a real estate text message.
Okay.
I watch my phone because I'm watching us making sure that we're
Oh,
on,
okay.
making sure
Wow.
we're on all that kind of stuff. So
Okay.
we're actually on like we're supposed to be on. So
Okay, good.
yeah. So the printing business really got lifted with the CB book.
Well, it was the CB book, but then we started, the farm became known as a midwifery center.
Oh
Because
yeah, that's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other story. We were, of course, at the age where we were all having children.
Yeah.
So when we got on the caravan, we even had my daughter was born on the caravan.
Yeah.
In our bus.
How is she, by the way?
She's great.
Good.
Yeah, she lives in Nashville. She's doing well.
I remember meeting her years ago.
Yeah. And along the way, we started learning about midwifery enough that we published a book. It's called the Spiritual Midwifery,
Yeah.
which also was a huge seller, and by the way, still is to this day.
Yeah.
And it was basically women's stories about having natural childbirth.
Yeah.
But the spiritual part was in a certain way to compose yourself and recognizing that it was a spiritual event to have a child.
Yeah.
And bringing a new
Life into the world,
life
yeah.
into the world was
Yeah.
a spiritual event. And it had to be treated that way. It wasn't a medical event specifically, unless there were complications, and
Yeah.
sometimes there are.
Yeah.
But very often it was a matter of the attitude of the mother and the family around the mother.
Yeah.
To have that, bring that baby in a peaceful environment.
Yeah.
And so that was another very successful book.
Yeah.
And to this day, we still have people. We have a midwifery school on the farm.
Yeah.
Where people come to become licensed midwives, and so that was a big part of our evolution.
Wow. You guys have accomplished a lot, really.
Yeah, and I do want to make a point about another thing that happened in the mid-70s.
Sure.
Which was that we realized that despite the fact that we really didn't have a lot of money or resources, what we did have was still more than a vast majority of people in the world. And we wanted to reach out to do something for other people like many churches do.
Yes, that's right.
You know, it turns out that is a function of recognizing your spiritual commitment to humanity.
Yeah.
And we created an organization called Plenty International.
Yes.
The idea being that if you share, there's plenty.
Yeah.
And so we started reaching out to people in other countries and in this country.
Yeah.
We did a number of things. We founded a free medical clinic in Washington, D.C., mostly for the Latino population, called Clínica del Pueblo.
Yeah.
Surprisingly still in existence to this day.
That's good.
And when we found them on the web some years ago, we called them up and they hadn't realized that we had founded them.
Oh, really?
We were the originators of the clinic that's still in operation today. We founded a free ambulance service in the Bronx, very down and out part of the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
And so we trained EMTs and sent them to the Bronx.
Right.
And sent up an ambulance. And I don't know if that's still operating, because what we would do is train people. We gave them the ambulance.
Yes.
And trained them in the practice of being an EMT.
Yeah.
We planted trees in Lesotho, South Africa. We went down to, and are still in Belize, working with the Mayan Indians there. We work with the Native Americans in North Dakota. Still in operation. My brother has been the executive director of that now for 50 years.
Wow.
Is just now retiring.
And what do they do?
Well, there are a number of different functions. We went down to New Orleans for in the hurricane down there some years ago. Met a whole lot of other people in church organizations that were doing the same thing we were doing.
Yeah.
And we still work in Belize, still there, working with the Mayans, building solar arrays to give them electricity in these remote villages.
Yeah.
We work with Native Americans in growing organic vegetables in Pine Ridge.
Yeah.
So
there was, I know that there was an effort too that you guys helped somewhere down in South America, where you helped establish, was it
Guatemala.
Guatemala. You did some work down there.
Well, there was an earthquake in Guatemala in the mid-70s, and so we went down there and we built a couple of thousand houses.
Yeah.
Supplied, the materials were supplied by the Canadian government, but we supplied the labor. And built houses. We built a city center in one of the remote villages down there. And we're no longer there. It became sort of a political hotbed.
Yeah.
And we had to leave. It was a very dangerous environment.
Wow.
So we left sometime in the 80s.
That's sad too.
Yeah, it was.
That's interesting. You know, you and I have talked back when we worked together. You and I have had lots of fairly deep conversations, actually. And I remember some of those conversations. Yeah. And I listened to you guys. I've listened to you before, and even some of this is a little bit new to me now. But a lot of the efforts that you guys made, the humanitarian efforts, the help, the aid, doing those things that you've done around the country and even around the world has been a great influence. And I don't think a lot of people realize the effort that came out of the farm.
Yeah, I think the farm was misunderstood, and understandably.
Yeah.
We were...
well, you were weird.
We were weird.
But
No question. No question. We recognize that, and
Yeah.
which is also why we tried, even from those early days, to reach out to the people around and say, we may look weird,
Yeah.
but we're actually, just like you.
Pretty good guys.
Yeah, we do our best.
Yeah, you got look. I've come to find out that almost anywhere you go, there's a mixture.
Sure.
There's good people and there's crazies and
Oh,
there's
yeah.
not so good. But if you look hard enough, you'll find some kinship.
Absolutely. I mean, I have lived here in Tennessee far longer than I've lived anywhere else. I've become a Tennessean.
Yeah.
And I think that's the case for all of us
Yeah.
in the community.
Yeah.
We are actually just like our neighbors.
Yeah. What I find fascinating, and I've said this to you before, if you'll remember, this is a long time ago conversation. But I remember where we were when we had it, and I said to you that you guys display a lot of Christian attributes without claiming to be one. And there's a lot of effort there. There's a lot of kinship with the Christian effort to be mission-minded or help-minded or doing for others, those kind of things. And you guys have done that.
Well, I don't think there was ever any attempt on our part to differentiate ourselves from Christianity as a religion.
Right.
In fact, we used to talk about the red parts in the Bible.
Yeah.
Which is,
Yeah.
I don't know if they still print Bibles that way, but when I was young and went to church, Jesus's words were written in red.
Right.
And those are guiding principles that I think we've all tried to live by.
Yeah.
So we're not alien from Christianity
No,
in that
not
sense.
at all.
But we've also embraced other religions that embody some of those same tenets of Christianity, the similarities. This is an old reference, but I'll throw it out anyway.
Okay.
Before flash drives and before floppy disks, there were punch cards.
Punch cards. Oh,
Remember punch cards?
Yeah.
You may have some listeners that remember those.
I remember punch cards.
The holes in the punch cards were the data, and you put the punch card into a computer and it would read the data. Well, we used to talk about a punch card. Each punch card was a religion, and if you stacked them all up together, what were the holes that went all the way through?
Yeah.
And those
Where they matched.
Where they matched. What were the similarities? And there I get back to love thy neighbor as thyself.
Yeah.
Is a common thread in any true religion. I'm not talking hocus pocus religions. I'm talking about the ones that guide people's lives.
Yeah.
Love thy neighbor is the basis of what the farm was about.
Well, for those of us who are confessing Christians, it says that there's two commandments that everything else hangs on.
Okay.
And that is, first of all, is to love God, and then to love your neighbors yourself.
Yes.
And on those two things, the whole thing hangs.
Everything else is dependent on
Yes,
those.
the whole thing hangs on those two things.
Right. Yeah, it's not complicated. It's hard,
Yeah.
but it's not complicated.
Well, that's why I said, and you and I agreed that communism works if everybody's perfect.
Right.
But
right.
they're not.
Right. And needless to say, the farm was far from perfect.
But
It still is.
it's been kind of fascinating to study it a little bit.
Sure.
It really, really has, because of you see the progression, but you also see the goodness that's come out of it.
Yeah.
At the same time. Somebody wants to chime in, maybe we'll see. Hey, good morning. How are you? Hello, you're on WDXE with us. I don't know what that's about. Nobody
Nope,
there.
Lost him.
Anyway.
Well, it was interesting because you talked about your class coming to the farm in the mid-'70s, which I found very interesting. I don't think I knew that.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah, I was just a young fella.
Yeah, you want to take the call?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I was just wondering, politically speaking, did everyone on the farm vote?
Did everyone on the farm vote? Is that what you asked?
Yes.
Okay. Oh yeah, I can tell you that.
Sure.
Yes. Whoops. All right, I might hang up with you, but yeah, I can tell you that you guys changed the political landscape of Lewis County.
Well, I think we did that. We tended to vote in a block because we were in many ways, and particularly in those days, more homogenous than we are now.
Yeah.
So we thought about things in the same way, but we also recognized that we didn't want to walk in to the small county and suddenly push it in one direction or another. That would have been unfair.
Yeah.
So we didn't put anybody up for election anywhere.
Right.
But we did vote, and we still do.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had our political discussions
Oh,
too.
we have indeed.
And look, you and I wouldn't. I mean, there were lots of things that you and I didn't see eye to eye on.
Oh yeah.
And probably still don't.
Right.
But I can tell you that I have always had a great love for you and Doug, and a great friendship with you guys.
And we
It's been
felt
a-
the
been
very same way.
Awesome friendship.
I still talk to other friends about you, Jeff, as somebody it's somebody that we could disagree with but had an absolute love for.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the way it should be.
That's exactly the way it should be.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly the way. Well, my guest Phil Schweitzer today, and we've been talking a lot about the farm history. A lot of us call it the hippie farm,
It's
but
still
it was
called
just the
that.
farm. And you know, the hippie movement itself. Are there? You guys? I hate to say this, but I'm one of you. I'm kind of a ladder. You know, I'm on the tail end of this, but you guys are getting old.
We've been there so long that people that weren't born yet have grandkids.
Yeah. Yeah, let me take another phone call. Hey, good morning. How are you, buddy?
Yes, ask him. I know y'all he probably told what year the first bunch come in when you talk about the gate being locked, when the first bunch of buses come in.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Yeah, the year that you landed.
1971.
71.
Yep.
Yeah, 1971.
54 years ago. In the late spring, or early spring.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it is, and like I say, I look back in amazement that we have survived. There were a lot of people that bet against us.
Yeah.
This is just a flash in the pan. You're going to come and go.
Yeah.
But I think the resilience of the community was shown by the fact that we could change. That when the commune didn't work, let's try something else because we love this place. We love the people here.
Yeah.
We love our land. And we love each
You
other.
found a way to make it work.
Yeah.
Oh, there's other things there I want to get to though. The businesses that have come out of the farm.
Right.
The publishing company, was that one of the first actual
It was.
outside business? So
Yeah.
So you had the publishing company. Then there's somebody that made Geiger counters.
Well, we still do that. Solar electronics.
Solar?
SEI is technically the way
so
they're called.
y'all did a lot of solar development, that kind
Well,
of
this in particular, it started as solar electronics. Now it's simply shortened to SEI, where they make. You could call them Geiger counters. We call them nuke busters.
Nuke busters, okay.
And that's a very successful little company.
Yeah, it's been very
Particularly after 9/11 and 3 Mile Island, if you remember that. There
Yeah.
was suddenly a lot of interest in having remote units that could determine the amount of radiation in the air.
Yeah, the mushroom people,
That has closed.
that's closed.
Yeah.
But it was thriving for a while.
We had a wonderful business, but the gentleman who ran it passed away.
Oh,
Yeah, that
it
was. We still have a school there that does
Have a school?
remote school teaching.
Okay, so you don't even
Yeah.
have. Yeah, that's right. Now that
Oh, it's huge.
now they do the internet, you can school.
Oh yeah, we
from
have a couple
distance.
of thousand students. Is the last I knew.
Oh, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Now, is
And then-
Village Media still in?
Still there? Yeah, I'm still do video work
Yeah.
and audio. I have a little audio studio to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, here we are. We're just going to keep going until we fall over.
And is there anything else that I'm leaving out that was developed there?
Well, of course, there was plenty, which I think is really the thing I'm most proud of for
Yeah.
the farm. And then let's see, businesses, midwifery.
Yeah, the midwifery. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do people still come to the farm to have their
Yes,
children?
absolutely. Yeah.
I thought that happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are people that travel in to have their.
Travel in, and then we have a place where they can stay and have their baby. Yeah.
You still have the farm store?
Oh yeah.
Good deal.
People that want to come visit, come by and check it out and go down.
Yeah, you can still visit the farm.
Sure.
There's a store there.
Sure.
Let's see. Hey, good morning. How are you?
Hello, Jeff. This is Jerry Bronner.
Hey, Jerry.
Just a question. I'm from Summertown, and I love the people from the farm. I always have. The farm band. I remember the farm band,
Rodney
and I remember the studio. They had, from what I understand, they had people from everywhere coming into the studio. Is that still there? The studio?
You talking about probably Village Media?
Yeah, not in the same form that it was, but I still run a studio. I was the founding member of the farm band, in fact.
That's right. I didn't even talk about that yet.
Well,
Yep.
I was a kid, but I loved the farm band. I love to hear some of that on the radio. We still play some of that now.
Hey, man, Jerry, I'll see if I can get us some recordings.
We'll get you something.
Love you, Jeff. See you, buddy.
Thank you, man. That's a good buddy of mine, and he is the he's the ice cream man here.
Oh, really?
His ice cream truck. So anyway, yeah, the farm band. We didn't even mention the farm band.
Well, the farm band was just because we played music a lot. You know, as I said early on in this discussion, is that I love playing music.
Yeah.
And we have a reunion every
Yes.
year, and that's
Yeah.
coming up in a couple of weeks, just for farm people that have lived on the farm. And me and another buddy that was in the original farm band are playing
Oh, good.
as the farm band.
Oh gosh.
So in some form or another, it still exists.
I remember, and I don't know what year this was, but the farm band came to the square here in town.
Sure it did, yeah.
And they played up on a tractor trailer
Yeah.
flatbed.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember being there, and it was like, that's a wild and crazy bunch up there.
It was. You know, it was sort of modeled after the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
You know, just crazy jamming on,
Yeah.
you know.
It was you were a product of your time.
We were, indeed.
Yeah, a product of your time, like we all are.
Yeah, can't avoid it.
Like we all are.
Yeah.
And but you know we've kind of connected
Yeah.
over that time frame.
Yeah.
Pretty neat. Pretty
Yeah.
neat. Well, Phil, it's been awesome to visit with you again and see you again. It's been
So
several
nice.
years.
Yes, it has been a while.
We've talked a little bit over the phone, but been a year since I've actually got to sit down with you, and it's
It
been
has
awesome.
been a long time, too
We're gonna
long.
have to do it again.
I hope so.
We'll do it again, and
Come visit us.
next time you come, you can bring the guitar.
I'll do that.
You can bring the guitar.
That'd be fun.
My son Daniel is really taking interest in that too, so I'll show you some of his stuff.
I'd love to see it.
All right, thanks, Bill, for being with you, buddy.
Thank you, Jeff.
W237 FD Wallensburg. Broadcast services of Prospect Communications.